Good morning. So on behalf of Chevron, I'd like to thank you for inviting us here this morning. I'm here with my colleague, Patty Doherty, and we're very proud to be with you today to kick off the 2009 MPACE conference. Thank you so much to all of our hosts. It takes countless hours to put together an event like this, and we really appreciate you doing it for us. And not to mention, we're in a really great place, Monterey. Chevron has had a relationship with the National Association of Colleges and Employers for over 20 years, but this is actually our first time participating with MPACE. We recruit from 29 different universities in the MPACE region, including 21 schools here in California alone, so it only makes sense for us to get involved on a more local level as well. We are part of the fabric of California. Our roots go back 130 years to the first major discovery of oil in Los Angeles. I encourage you to take a look at the brochures on the exhibit hall tables, and please take some Chevron chapstick needed in this cold weather, and learn more about Chevron's long-standing presence in California and the impact that we have on our state community. Today, while Chevron is a global energy leader, our commitment to California remains strong and vibrant. Our university talent pipeline, and in particular our summer internship program, are an integral part of our people strategy. That is why even in today's tough economy, we've made a commitment to continue hiring with college hires. Students who come to work for Chevron have the opportunity to do everything from working on an offshore oil platform, to developing technologies to find natural gas, to supporting research on biofuels, to creating financial models for international capital projects. An intern working at Chevron can use their own human energy to help solve tomorrow's energy problems today. But enough about us. My main role today is to introduce you to our conference's keynote speaker. Where did he go? He's over here.
I'm hiding.
He hid on me. Steven Rothberg is president and founder of collegerecruiter.com. He is widely recognized as an expert in online marketing, particularly in the fast-growing areas of affiliate revenue share programs, job boards, social networking sites such as Facebook and MySpace, and blogging. I really had to orient myself to this whole social media space. It's up and coming, definitely. He's been widely quoted by regional, national, and international print and online media, including the Associated Press, Entrepreneur, Black Collegian, and abcnews.com. Steven holds a Bachelor's of Commerce honors degree from the University of Manitoba and a Juris Doctorate from the University of Minnesota. Please help me give a warm MPACE welcome to Steven Rothberg.
Thank you. Thank you all. I've been told we have 3.5 seconds before lunch, so I'll go rather quickly today. Well, you kind of could figure out I'm not from around these parts. I grew up in Canada. I live in Minneapolis. I moved to Minneapolis for the weather. Anybody seen the weather report this morning? Okay. Which city in Minnesota has 6 inches of snow on the ground? Anybody? Did I see Minneapolis over here? You just won yourself a, whoop, got a catch, come on. Now, which husband of 3, or which father of 3 and husband of 1 is in Monterey rather than snow blowing? Anybody? Right, yeah, absolutely. Much better. Before I get started in the, sort of the meat of the presentation today, those of us who get the Wall Street Journal, last week there was an article in here written by Eric Schmidt, the CEO of what company? Google. Who wants to get hit? There we go. So I'm going to just read a couple of paragraphs. So Eric writes last week, it's the year 2015. The compact device in my hand delivers me the world, one news story at a time. I flip through my favorite papers and magazines, the images as crisp as in print, without a maddening wait for each page to load. Even better, the device knows who I am, what I like, and what I already read. So while I get all the news and comments, I also see stories tailored for my interests. I zip through a health story in the Wall Street Journal, and a piece about Iraq from Egypt's, and I can't pronounce that name, Al-Gamhouria or something, translated automatically from Arabic to English. I tap my finger on the screen, telling the computer brains underneath it that it got this suggestion right. The guys at Google know one or two things. They're pretty smart. Eric obviously is a very, very big believer and proponent in mobile. I haven't heard him say this. My guess is he probably has, that we're not going to, in years, whether it's 5 years from now or 20 years from now, we're not going to sit down at our desks with desktop computers. They're going away. I just wouldn't be at all surprised if in 5 to 10 years, our primary computer is carried on a holster on our waistband. Those of us, well, I don't, but those with iPhones are already a step in that direction. It's really a much, much more powerful computer on your waist than what the vast majority of us had 10 years ago, and what some of our clients are still working with today. Not to mention any federal government agencies by name, but seriously, we've got a federal government agency that their HR people are working with Windows 95 computers, and they wonder why they can't log into our website. It's like, because your computer doesn't know what JavaScript is. Today, we're going to talk about these 4 main areas. I'm first going to sort of talk about what is mobile marketing. It's much more than just cell phone text messaging, although that is certainly a very, very big part of it. I'm going to talk about Obama. Not in a I love him, I hate him way, but more of a what did he do a year ago, a year and a half ago, that I think took mobile marketing from being theoretical for most to being practical for some. I want to talk specifically about a handful of employers who have already used mobile marketing successfully in their recruitment advertising campaigns, so that when you go back to your offices, you'll be able to say, well, okay, we haven't done this, but United Parcel Service has, and this is how they did it, so let's draw some lessons from that. And then I'm also going to talk about some best practices that we've learned from doing campaigns for some of our clients. We've had some good, we've had some bad, and we've had some ugly. Fortunately, I think the good are mostly outweighing the uglies. I look at mobile marketing in that there are 3 primary components to it, or 3 buckets, if you will. The first one is your mobile website. Okay, how many people in this room have an iPhone? Okay, you guys don't have mobile devices the way that the rest of us do. You can actually see a web page, right? Pretty remarkable. Those of us with Blackberries or a Samsung or any other kind of a device, we look at the internet almost like it's DOS still. I mean, it's pathetic. I pull up my Blackberry and it's like, I think I'm on a website. And the mobile websites, anybody in a career service office here, an employer, don't look at your own website through an iPhone if you have one. If you really want to be dismayed about what your website looks like, go to a more traditional phone, somebody's Blackberry or Treo or whatever, pull up your website on their mobile device, and be prepared to vomit. It is, I guarantee you, it is horrid. There are, of the Fortune 500, there might be a half a dozen that actually have a website that you can even really read on a mobile device. We went live in 1996. In 1996, of the Fortune 500, there were 50 companies that had websites. And their websites were usually like 5 pages long, kind of like online brochures. This is 2009, but it's also 1996, if you understand my meaning. We are at the very beginning of the mobile web, just like in 1996, we were at the beginning of the web. So there's a big advantage to having a mobile website. The roughly quarter of the people who put up their hands with iPhones, you're going to contribute big time to the traffic of those organizations. About 13% increase in traffic is seen by employers and other organizations as soon as they go live with a mobile phone, with a mobile website. So if your boss says to you, I need some metrics, why, other than the fact that it's cool, other than the fact that you think it would be a nice project for you to work on, why does this make sense? 13% increase. Now, translate that to your numbers. Let's say you get 1,000 people a day coming to your site, so a 13% increase is 130. If you had to pay $1 for each person to come to your site through Google AdWords, that's $130 a day times 365 days a year. You know, that's how you can calculate an ROI for your boss. SMS, the second major bucket. This is where the big action is right now. This is the cell phone text message. Those of us with teenagers, we know all too well what this is. This is a possible way to market one-to-one, where you text a student or a recent grad and tell them about your opportunity. This is also something that some employers are doing to text tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of targeted candidates to say, we are XYZ company and we are hiring people like you. And I'll show you some examples of those campaigns later. The biggest problem with text messaging is that you are limited to basically 140 characters. Think of it as 2 sentences. There are some ways that you can economize on that. Again, if you have teens, you know some of the lingo. Don't try to be cute, but it's perfectly acceptable to use the number 2 instead of spelling out TWO. You saved yourself 2 characters. Rather than putting, and I haven't been to Chevron's website for a while, but if it's http://www.chevron.com/careers/job/California///. Well, you know, you're probably over the 140 characters just to get to a job posting. Instead, you can go to a service like tinyURL, snipURL, bit.ly, bit.ly they call it, and you can shorten that 187 character URL or web page address down to about 10. And so you can spend the rest of your message on what matters. You cannot include graphics. We get asked this by every single new client. Can I bold the text? No. Can I put a logo in? No. Can I put a photo of my dog in? I'd like it, but no. It's just plain text. I've been online since '95. And back then, a lot of websites were just literally plain text. They weren't even really websites. Email, DOS, those of us who remember the blue screens or the green screens, it's just like that. It's just text. So branding is much more difficult. You can't kind of show the nice photos of Monterey in the background where your corporate headquarters is or anything like that. It's important if you send a message, we'll talk about this more too, to include a URL, to include a link to a page where they can get more information. Because although some people who tweet a lot think that 140 characters is very informative, it's not. And they are going to want to get more information. Don't make them kind of guess, oh, well, if I'm interested in that Chevron job posting, I guess I should go to their homepage and then click careers and then click, click, click. No, send them right to the page that you want them to go to. Give them that URL. The third thing I'm telling people, just be aware of it. Don't do it. MMS, Multimedia Message Service, it's basically sending videos and photos. Unless somebody has specifically asked you to please send me your recruitment video to my phone, don't. Because it just takes so long to download. If they're not expecting it, what you want to do to that student to tell them about the programs your career service office has or this great new video that your company has, is you want to improve your brand with them. But if you send them some big honking photo or video, it's going to have exactly opposite effect. I mean, I guess if you're, you could always send a video on behalf of your competitors and just do that. So who's receiving mobile ads? This is kind of the why part of the presentation. You go back to your office and your boss says, well, that's very interesting. You heard this guy Rothberg talk. Well, you know, but what's in it for us? Is this actually important to a Gen Xer like me to a baby boomer, the connections are a little bit tenuous. To a Gen Yer, and every time I do these conferences, it seems like there are more of you in the audience, so it has nothing to do with my age. But this is more obvious to a Gen Yer. It's like, of course you should be communicating with me by my phone. Well, why? 99.7% of college students have cell phones. That's a higher percentage than college students who are actually born to human beings. I mean, and so, I mean, it's just, it's everyone, right? I mean, but 5 years ago, for sure 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that number was probably 60%. 10 years ago, probably was 10%. I got my first cell phone, I think, in 94, 93. And it was one of those big brick ones with the big, and I could actually put it inside a jacket pocket, and I looked like Tony Soprano. And that thing was sweet, because everybody else that had a mobile phone or a portable phone carried it in one of those bags. Remember those? You know, so this is remarkable. In 15 years, how far we've come. What's it going to be like 15 years from now? And that's what Eric Schmidt's writing about. It's like, forget about just trying to get email on your phone. You're going to be reading newspapers on it. 85% of smartphones, 85% of college students have a smartphone. Smartphone meaning, there are different definitions, but usually it's a real keyboard, BlackBerry, Trio, iPhone. They can see a web page. They can text with it. That's the sort of the normal kind of a definition. So if you're trying to market to people on a cell phone, those are the ones. So 85% have them. A year from now, what's that going to be? 92%? Again, we're getting close to that everyone number. Only 9% of college students have iPhones. So if your website shows up fine on your iPhone and you're wondering whether we need to build a mobile site, and you say, well, it looks good on my phone, why should I go and spend $2,000 or $3,000 or $20,000 or whatever it's going to be for you to mobilize your web phone? You know, looks good to me. It must look good to the students as well, because if I've got an iPhone, they must too. Well, fewer than 1 in 10 have iPhones. 94% of them text message. 6% of them won't admit it. 52%, this number kind of blows me away. In the last 3 months, 52% have not only received an ad on their cell phone, which is basically double from just a few years ago, but half of them recalled getting that ad and responded to it. Okay? Who watched television within the last 24 hours? Okay? Who recalled seeing even one specific ad that you can think of? Okay, 1, 2, 3. I do have one left. How many of those ads? It's good. That was kind of like a Tory Hunter catch. How many of those ads that you saw on TV in the last 24 hours did you actually take action on? Go to the store, call for those gold coins, you know, whatever it was. I mean, we don't. We don't remember the ads. We don't take action on them. And for 3 months, you know, you're talking a huge percentage. It's meaningful. It's targeted. It's on their device where they can do something with it. Unlike TV, which goes in one eye and out the other. Another thing that just has astounded me is that recently the number of mobile devices, cell phones, globally is now 4 times the number of computers. When we look at trends in fashion, right, where do we look? Do we look at Wichita, Minneapolis, where I grew up, Winnipeg? We look abroad. We look for fashion, we're going to look at Italy, we're going to look at France. When we look at electronic trends, we look at Asia. And if you look to Asia, they're not sitting at their desks on their computers, they're on their mobiles. Now, part of that is because they didn't have the infrastructure that we had. They didn't have AT&T laying copper cable all over the country 100 years ago. So when they went to phones, they went wireless right from the get-go. But they've also made just huge investments in their infrastructure so that their phones work like we want them to work, that they're fast. Now, when your boss says, okay, great, lots of people are using their cell phones, there are lots of text messages, but why should we be doing this? Why should our career service office be trying to get our students out to information fairs? Why should we as an employer try to get them to our on-campus interviews, get them to come to our employment website to apply, whatever? That's what this part of the conversation is about. Well, as we've already discussed, it's basically every student has one. They carry it around with them 24 hours a day. There's no other device that's like that. Nothing. And before the 90s, there never was. You might carry a pen around with you, but you can't communicate through a pen with somebody else unless maybe you're Mac Smart. But it's the only way that you can reach all of those students, all of those grads, whenever you want to, wherever they are. It's very, very personal. If you leave the conference today and you leave behind your notepad, your briefcase, maybe even your wallet and your cell phone, which of those would you probably be the most upset about? Which of those is going to make you feel the most out of touch? Now, you're going to be concerned about your wallet because your credit cards, which are maxed, but it's kind of like, well, I can't really use them anyway, and if somebody wants my credit card and they pay the bill, that's fine with me. But it's your cell phone, right? It's like, honey, I'm going to be home in an hour. You can't do that with your MasterCard. So it's very personal, and people really care about it. When you text them, when they're going to your mobile website on their phones, it matters to them. Another thing is, and I know the employers in the room don't want to hear this, but you can't monitor them. You know, unless you're the military and you tell people that when they check in at the gate, you leave your cell phone here. All of us in our places of work have our personal phones with us. And if you're another employer and you want to target that person, you can get a message to them in the middle of the workday and their boss will never know it. You can't track their emails on their phones. You can't track what websites they're going to with spy software that some employers have installed. Some employers block Facebook and MySpace, and even I've heard they even have blocked Yahoo because, God forbid, you can get personal email through Yahoo. Well, you can't do that on the mobile. It's just not going to happen. So if you want to market to people whose employers are blocking them, whose employers don't trust them, you can do that on their mobiles. By 2020, it's supposed to be the primary connection device. So, you know, Eric Schmidt's talk in 2015 for the newspapers, this is going to be the way that, like in Star Trek, you just have your badge. Sorry for the audio there. Somebody listening at home at some point is going to like have blood coming out of their ears, but too bad. They should have been here, right? When I was talking earlier about the number of ads that people recall getting over the last 3 months and that they've taken action on them, it's because of what's called in the marketing world brand recall. Do you remember hearing about that store, that ad, that offer? 20 times higher for an ad that you see on your mobile than an ad that you see on the web. Job postings, banner ads, whatever. So if you spend $175 on a job posting with us, you can spend 19 times more running an ad on the web and you're still better off. The numbers get really scary really fast. The response rate, typical ad on the web, about 2% of the people who see the ad will actually respond to it. They'll click the apply button, they'll go to your website, they'll send you an email, whatever it is that you're asking them to do. Mobile, 12%. I mean, what other kind of advertising gets more than 1 out of every 10 people who get an ad responding to it? It's just, it's off the charts. Also off the charts is the volume of text messaging. Anybody have teenagers and do not have an unlimited texting plan? Okay, didn't think so. For those who have not seen a text message, this is what, and 2 years ago when I first was doing a sort of a somewhat similar presentation, I bet you half the people in the audience had never seen a text message. Now it's going to be a far smaller number. But this is what a text message looks like on a typical phone. And there's at the bottom, well, you can't really see the pointer that well because my angle isn't that great. But there at the bottom is a URL, is a web page address. You can click on that on a smartphone and go to the website. Over on the left shows the increase in spend and how much money is being spent on mobile marketing from '07, where it was basically $1 billion, to a couple of years from now when it's supposed to exceed 6. So how are organizations actually using it? Well, great, okay, there are lots of students who are using text messaging, and I get that a lot more of them are going to respond to a text message, but how? Now, this is where, when I'm sitting in an audience, this is the disconnect for me. A lot of presenters will sort of say this is why you should do something, but they don't tell you how to do it. So those of you who don't like the nuts and bolts part of the presentations, the doors at the back, don't slam it on your way out. In 2008, last year, 89% of the Fortune 500 used mobile marketing. So again, we're almost at that point where it's almost everyone. So if you feel like it's out there, maybe it's a next year, maybe it's 3 years from now, we're not quite there yet, it's 89%. Now, let me qualify that. That's 89% of Fortune 500 organizations, period. Not the recruitment advertising budgets of those organizations. We're basically all in the HR world. We all know that our budgets are about this big compared to what the marketing folks get to spend. So the marketing folks are where most of that is coming from, and we tend to lag. We lag not because we're dumb, well, some of you are, not me, but we lag because we don't have the budgets. We need to look at what they're doing, what's working, what isn't working. So walk down the halls to the people in your organizations who are doing this and ask them for their good, the bad, and the ugly, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, and then just try to replicate their successes. Another thing that really kind of blows me away is that 1/3 of the Fortune 500 are now spending over 10% of their total ad budgets on mobile marketing. Over 10%. 15 years ago, these things didn't exist. Where's that money come from? Well, some of it's come from web, but anybody own a newspaper anymore? I mean, or, you know, it's all coming out of the hide of the newspapers. The increase in the brand awareness and applications. I was talking earlier a little bit about how, say, a career service office could text their students to get them to come out. One of the things that some of our clients are doing that I think is just brilliant is that they'll have, say, an on-campus recruiting event at Stanford on December 13th, and they'll text all of the students that we have in our database, that they have, that Stanford has, you know, wherever that list is going to come from, and we'll talk about that later. They'll text all of those targeted students on December 12th, the day before the event. Don't forget to come. Because if you send them an email, they might only check their email every 3 days, and it's only going to have 1/20th of the impact of a text message. So if you send them that text the day before, they're going to come out. We had an investment banking client a couple of years ago that was having a huge problem with candidates showing up for their on-campus interviewing at basically the Ivy League schools. So they started to text these students who had already said they're coming. And they went from getting like 5 showing up to 25. Well, 25 students showing up at an on-campus event for many organizations would be a big failure. But to an investment banking firm where each one of those students is worth millions a year, it's a huge success. Now all of a sudden the number of attendees at the information fair exceed the number of senior vice presidents who have, a penthouse in Manhattan. Can you imagine being that person coming in from, Manhattan to some Boston fair, and there are 12 of you SVPs in the room and 3 students? Heads are going to roll. Now, if there are 25 of them, now you're cool. Opt-in database. I've been seeing this for years on the email side. Employers who have started to get involved in email marketing, the smarter ones have been using our list and lists from other vendors to build their own databases. They get the students to come to the employer site to register, give permission, then the employer can then follow up with emails forever, until that candidate says no. That's happening also on the text messaging side. Get that student to text you. We'll send out, or another list owner will send out a text on your behalf, and then get those students to give you their cell phone numbers as they register or reply back to you, so that you can then text them yourself. It's a heck of a lot cheaper for you to do it internally than to go and hire some third party to do it. And engaging the candidates in your brand. You're going to see that with the Obama stuff, how they did that so very well. So I want to show you how different mobile websites look from very, very good organizations. The people at the back of the room might have a hard time seeing this, but at the very bottom of the slide is, if you want to do this on your own website, there's a link there. And by the way, just give me your business card afterward, and I can email the might to you, and then it'll be much easier for you. But there's a website it's basically called the Emulator. You can go to it, and on 3 different standard phones, see what your website looks like. This is what, on the left, Monster, 800-pound gorilla in the recruiting space since the online recruiting space started. Their mobile website comes up as just gibberish. So if Monster has this problem, don't feel bad if you do. Experience, excellent college recruiting site, blank page. Better, but not as good as I bet you it'll be in a few months, because I know these guys. They're very smart. This won't last for very long. Now you go over to Eric Schmidt's company, Google, and yeah, they've got more resources, but Monster has plenty of resources too. And Google, they've got a logo, and it's really, really simple. Jobs, search US openings, and there's a search field there that you can type stuff into, and you click the search button. Kind of what you'd expect from Google, right? If you're going to go to the Google mobile website to search for jobs, do you want a whole bunch of different drop-downs? No, Google knows that you know how to keyword search. This isn't 1998 where you go to Yahoo and you click on the first directory link, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next, and get to a list of 12 pages that somebody at Yahoo thinks are good. That directory searching is ancient history, and yet we in the employment world still kind of do that, don't we? On our employment sites with all the drop-downs and what do you want and what locations. These kids know how to keyword search. Ours is on the left. We did a kind of a blatant ripoff of what Google's doing. And then the next screen shows you just how little information you can fit onto one screen. It's basically the job title. Management, sales, telecommunication, software, ZCom, Inc., ZCom, and then underneath that is the description, which I've shown over on the left side. So you have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll to see an entire job description on a mobile phone. So don't feel dismayed when you go to your mobile site that you're all going to have by 9 a.m. tomorrow and see that you're going to have this kind of thing. It's a function of those phones can only show so much. When we all get iPhones or devices like that, this will improve tremendously. We were talking before about text messaging. Text messaging and keyword ads. You can do a targeted text messaging campaign to female accounting seniors with a 3.5 to a 4.0 GPA in the Los Angeles metro area who attend any one of these 48 schools. You can do that through any number of vendors. If you have your own mailing list, you should be able to do that yourself. If you can't, you can use a third party to do it. If you've ever watched American Idol or a lot of the other reality TV shows where they tell you to vote for this person, text their name or some kind of a code to a number, that's what's called keyword advertising. You're sending a keyword, the name of the candidate or the contestant one or something like that, to a short code, usually a number. It's kind of like a reverse on text messaging. You're texting the organization and then they're going to send you information back, is how we can use this, and it's cheap and it's easy. This is like hundreds of dollars of stuff a month for an employer to implement. If you want to see how it works, text the word college to 876-289. Now on my phone, I have in my address book everybody that I know, and then it's got up at the very top of it like a use once or number. That's where you would type that 876-289. If you text the word college in the body to that number, you're going to get a response back from us, like that basically says, thank you for your interest. Okay? Employers, career service office people, think about how you can use this to communicate with candidates. I'll show you how UPS did this, but every single one of your ads now has your website address in it, right? Why not this? Why not text Chevron jobs to whatever? And then that candidate gets a text back. What if Chevron wants to know, are you an engineer? Are you looking for a job in one of our service stations? Big difference. California, Illinois, big difference. They can have different keywords for different jobs in different locations, and so the responses back are different, and then the database they build would be also different. Now, Obama. Love him, hate him, don't know who he is. When he started his primary campaign, strategy formulation, how are we going to beat Hillary? Okay, I mean, we're talking 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It's easy for us now, almost a year after he was elected or took office, to forget that the first African American president was not favored by the African American communities. Hillary had the vast majority of support amongst voters, likely voters. Hispanics, Gen Y, same sort of thing. Hillary got a lot of bump in those markets or those targets from what Bill did. And Obama knew that if he was going to defeat whoever the Republican candidate was, if he was going to defeat Hillary, he was going to have to win these markets. They made the most sense for him to get a big majority and overcome the areas that he was going to be weak in. So what's the one thing that these three demographics have in common? They disproportionately use cell phone text messaging. Okay, Gen Y makes sense. African Americans, Hispanics, it was news to me. When he really focused his efforts in his campaign on the mobile marketing piece, and the result at the end of the day was he won 2/3 the Gen Y vote, 95% of the African American vote, and again, that's not, it wasn't a given. Anybody remember the Iowa primary? Who was favored there? Hillary, right? Overwhelmingly. Who won? Obama. Because he got all 12 African American votes out of Iowa. Hispanics, 2/3. Seriously. I live right next door to Iowa. There aren't very many African Americans. One of my employees grew up there. She's African American. She said that when her family moved there, the number of African Americans in Iowa dropped by half. So they set up a mobile marketing site, BarackObama.mobi. Mobi is sort of the, instead of .com, Mobi is for the mobile site. And They asked you over and over and over again, all their events, all their rallies, their website, to text the word HOPE to, what was it, 62262 or something like that. When you texted that, now they had you on their list. You've opted in to receive messages from them, and then they would text you back and ask you for more information, for you to send out the word. Hillary, McCain, zero mobile marketing. Their website, optimized for smartphones. So it wasn't just people on iPhones who could see their website. It was anybody with a web browser on their mobile. And when you texted that word HOPE to 62262 or however you signed up, they would text you right back with that keyword, and they basically say, thank you, reply back with your zip code. Okay, so if I got that, I'd reply back 55410. What does that do for them? Okay, if they have a rally in Phoenix, 85016, do I want to know about it? Do they want me to know about it? No, because they don't want to annoy me. But this way they could say, okay, this guy's an Obama supporter because he's signed up, and he lives in Minneapolis. So when we have a rally in 12 hours, because that's how these things work, right? It's just like, boom, oh, by the way, Obama's coming to town tomorrow. How do you get the message out for that? Do you run ads in the newspaper? No. You know, radio stations, TV, that kind of stuff, and you hope for that support, and you text, because that hits everybody right now. Also, messages at all their rallies. They would tell people to send this to a friend. Get 3 of your friends every single rally, whether Obama was there or not. They asked always to text 3 of your friends to ask them to text HOPE to 62262. And that made it viral. If I tell you to use collegerecruiter.com for your recruitment advertising campaigns, that's not nearly as impactful as if one of your colleagues tells you, one of your friends tells you, because I've got an axe to grind, right? I'm going to make money if you run a campaign with us. But if a friend, somebody you trust, you don't want to trust me, tells you to, then you're going to be much more likely to do it. This is what Obama's website looked like on a regular phone, regular web-enabled phone. The top left screen is the home page, and it's got, you know, his picture looking up into the heavens. The middle screen was kind of a menu. And then the bottom right screen had the opportunity to sign up for alerts and information. You could click on a button and get a white paper emailed to you on healthcare. Because unlike in 2015, if Eric Schmidt is right, very few people are going to read a 15-page white paper on healthcare policy on their mobile phone. That's still better by email. If you texted, it would say, welcome to Obama Mobile News and Updates. Please reply with your zip code to get local Obama information, blah, blah, blah. And then if you did that, it would send you back another message saying, thank you very much. Download ringtones, wallpaper, and more. Some of the more that was really cool, your ringtone. When your phone rings, the sound you hear, you could have Obama's voice saying, you've got a call. Okay? Now, if you're a Republican, that would be nauseating. If you're an Obama supporter, think about it. Okay, so you're at like the organic grocery store, you know, sipping your Starbucks. You just finished parking your Prius, and you're sitting there with your friend, and she's, you know, drinking her all hemp carrot juice, and your phone rings, and it's Obama's voice telling you that you have a call. Are you going to have a conversation about that with your friend? And why do you support Obama versus Hillary or McCain? Viral. Very, very brilliant. Text messaging was woven into the fabric of their campaign. Everything they did had text messaging and mobile marketing in there. Anybody sign up to be the first one to hear about the vice presidential choice? Okay, 1 or 2 or 3. Okay, they blew it, didn't they? They told CNN or something a couple of hours before. So I think that they got some egg on their face. But how many people gave them their cell phone numbers so that they would hear about it? And then I bet you anything, you got text messages saying, give us 25 bucks. They used it for fundraising, getting out the vote, all sorts of stuff. So for employers, you're not in business to elect Obama or anybody else. You're in the business of getting candidates to apply, hire them, and hopefully keep the good ones. United Parcel Service has done a fabulous job with mobile marketing. One of their campaigns, they had a goal of hiring thousands of part-time workers. It was Christmas, I think it was Christmas '07, 2 years ago now. Hiring a lot of part-time workers in a job market like we had in '07, a lot harder than hiring part-time workers like a job market we have in '09. So you've got to get good people who have a pulse and are not currently incarcerated to apply to work part-time, very physical job. The pay is decent, but it's 6 to 8 weeks of work, and then you're done. Thank you very much. We'll see you in a year. So it's good, honest work, but it's not easy to find these people. They, for years, had done the traditional stuff, all the usual suspects, like they said in Casablanca, job fairs, print, radio, whatever. And they continued to do that, but they also added keyword advertising and text messaging campaigns in 7 markets. And they broke it up so if they knew that if you were texting back a certain code, they knew that you were looking for a package handler versus a driver's helper job in Chicago versus Los Angeles. So they knew exactly what kind of a job that you were looking for. They also did an SMS push, which means they came to a vendor like us, it wasn't us, and said, text these 50,000 or 100,000 or 200,000 people or whatever that we think will be likely to be interested in our jobs. Well, the results, they directed a lot of these people to their job fairs. They saw the attendance at the job fairs skyrocket. They were able to measure the return on investment, and it rocked. They also were smart, and they kept the numbers of the people who responded and where they were and what position they were in. So they built their own database so they didn't have to go back to the vendor the next year and buy it. They could do it internally, which it just makes it cheaper and cheaper and better each year. So they're doing more and more cell phone text messaging. We had several clients that needed to hire a lot of people quickly. And we've done campaigns for them. One was a consumer electronics client hiring inside sales. Another was a finance and accounting. A bank hiring, remember when banks hired? A bank hiring finance and accounting people. And another one was a company actually not all that far from here, a software company. And this one actually, I got involved in it because they were asking for stuff that my staff had no idea on, and I didn't either. I mean, it was like technology that I'd never heard of. And they had like 5 schools. And we only want people in this major who have these skills. I mean, it was very, very hardcore kind of stuff. We pushed it to 15,000 students. They ended up broadening the criteria because we had like 800. And they could text 15,000 for the same price. So they ended up just hitting basically all the software engineers at those schools. And then they've come back to do more. In wrapping, best practices. I didn't really talk about it earlier in the presentation, but you want to make sure, and this is a buzzword that either you're going to get my slides and take a look at it back at the office or write down some notes now. That phrase, carrier approved aggregator, is critical. A year ago it was good. 2 years ago it was like, I don't know what that is. What it means is that T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, all of the major carriers know who it is that's sending that message. Any one of us individually can send a message to any one of us and it's no problem. But if you want to send a message to 15,000 people or 100,000 people, Sprint is going to go, whoa, wait a sec. We are not going to be sending out spam like the email companies did. We're not going to send out your Viagra ads. We're not going to send out your offshore gambling ads. We're not going to send your porn ads. We're going to block that. Because we've got a whole lot of subscribers who are paying us $50 a month, and if we push porn to them, they're going to drop us and they're going to go over to AT&T. Thankfully, our mobile companies have done a pretty good job of blocking spam, right? Much better than the email companies have, or the ISPs. Carrier-approved aggregator means that, whoever it is that's sending out the messages has pre-approval from Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, etc., to send that message. They know that you're wearing a white hat. So if you're sending a message on behalf of Pfizer, they're going to let it go through if it's for employment. If you're sending a message sort of for Pfizer to sell Viagra, They're going to block it. And then they're going to block all of your other campaigns too. So if you are going to do it in-house or use a third party, make sure that they're a carrier-approved aggregator. Similar is the fourth bullet item, the opt-in. Make sure you have permission. If a student or grad comes to your site, registers with your college, and says, here's my cell phone number, that's not good enough. They need to affirmatively check a box or do something to tell you, yes, send me these messages. Legally, no, they don't have to do that, but best practices, it will greatly reduce the complaints if they knowingly sign up for it. Think about who you're sending it to. We get clients who, for one reason or another, don't get their ad campaigns approved until Friday at 4 o'clock. And they'll say, send it out. Well, do you really want it to go up Friday at 4 o'clock? People are leaving work, they're off for the weekend, they're mentally checked out. Wouldn't it be better to hold this until, say, Monday at 1? It's like, no, my boss is going to be upset with me if it doesn't go out this week. I told him it's going to go out this week, so it needs to go out this week. It's like, well, you can lead a horse to water, and sometimes it just has to be that way. We found with employment campaigns, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, get a far better response rate than on the weekends. Although we do have some clients who know better than us, and for their candidates, it just works better. Don't spam them. And what I mean by that is, don't send them a message every day. Put yourself in their shoes. Would you want to receive 38 messages in 38 days from an employer, even if you were interested in them? And if you were, wouldn't you not be interested in them anymore? The first word equals your brand. At the very beginning of the message, if you are Enterprise Rent-A-Car, have Enterprise. If you are Stanford and you're talking to your students, have Stanford. It's kind of like in an email where people can see who it came from. And you don't need to do it when it's one-to-one because people will know your number or your name may even show up on their text. But if it's sort of a stranger, an employer or career service office, tell them right off who you are. Any questions?